Welcome all my friends. Step on in, there's room for everybody. You have entered the express elevator to hell, going down. This is Tomb of Annihilation but better. We're talking about levels 3, 4, and 5 and the crazy things that I decided to do to just mess with this dungeon. It's an amazing dungeon. The design is genius. There's so little that needed to be tweaked at all to increase the fun, but I found a way. That's what I do. I just tweak. I mess with stuff. Here we are. Let me tell you a little bit about the things that we did. So first off, let's talk about Acererack's next two warnings. So level 5 doesn't have Acererack warnings. You're on your own, but levels 2, 3, and 4 have them. And I made changes to both of those. So on floor 3, I changed the first line of the warnings. So the line originally reads, "Walk through water with weapon in hand." Now this has to do with, there's a room where there's water on the floor, there's like a waterfall in the middle, and there's a bunch of statues with different weapons. And if you don't walk through with the proper weapon, which is the trident, then you get blown backwards and you take all this damage and all that kind of stuff. And I changed it to walk through the falls with weapon of water. I thought that helped a little bit to realize which weapon you're supposed to take. Because if you don't know that, if a weapon of water is a trident, I don't think that's too big a hint. And that way it makes a little more sense when they're going through it. Because if not, it's just trial and error, and I don't think that's very much fun. So that's a little change I made to that warning. And for the fourth floor, the big change I made was to the hint for the elemental cells. Now these are very notorious in the Dungeon Master world as very difficult puzzles to get through. Players can get really confused and really frustrated and really dead really, really fast. So the original, and again, this is the first line of the warning. The original one says, "Death to fire, dying or drowned, precious air, falling sand." All right. So I think death to fire is fine because the way to get through that room is to extinguish the candle. Dying or drowned is fine because you have to eat stuff or you drowned. You know, that's not too bad. The last one, falling sand, gives a really good preview of the floor is going to fall out from underneath you. But precious air, I mean, isn't air always precious? This is a room where it's a vacuum. There's no air whatsoever. And there's a skeleton on the wall of an aarakocra. And they're supposed to remember that aarakocra are like birds. And birds have hollow bones. So maybe if I break one of the hollow bones, there'll be air inside it. And then they're saved. So that's the puzzle. Nope. So I'll tell you what I did to fix that when we get to it. But those are the two changes I made to the last two warnings. So let's go to one of my favorite spots from, if you look, one of my top 10 lists, one of my favorite spots is the Mirror of Life Trapping. So this mirror has 12 panes in it, and there are currently 8 creatures in it. Really there are 9, but the players can only deduce that there are 8 because one of the seemingly empty panes has an invisible stalker in it. Tricky, very tricky. And it's a very eclectic group of creatures that are trapped in this mirror. There's a troll and a minotaur, and there's a warrior and a peasant and a drow explorer. Lots of different things in there. There's a sturge, which I think is hilarious because the poor little thing was just minding its own business flying through this cavern and got zapped into the life trapping. 3 empty spots. If a player sees it and fails the save, you roll the 12-sided dice. They get sucked into whatever pane you rolled. And if there's something in that pane, it gets out. And so a lot of these things are hostile, so there's a lot of fights that can be had. If they break the mirror for whatever reason, then everything comes out, and then you have a giant battle on your hands. So the thing that I would change here, the thing that I changed is, instead of a troll, I made it a venom troll, because heart, the venom troll, love them dearly. And then I put the skeleton key in this mirror they've got to find a skeleton key on every level. I tended to put the skeleton keys in the areas I really wanted them to go. Like I didn't want them to miss it. There are times when you could pass by a room and not go back to it. And I wanted to put these in places where I knew that I needed them to go. So I thought that was kind of cool to put the skeleton key in the mirror. So that was a tiny little change to this mirror. But what I would say to you is fill the mirror with things that will be meaningful to your party. If, like me, they had a great experience, memorable experience with a venom troll. That's why I put the venom. Swap that out. Swap the monsters out for things that make sense to you. You could put old companions in this mirror. You could put enemies that thought they'd killed, or creatures that you haven't been able to work into a campaign yet. You can put them in there. So mess around with what monsters are in this. Make it fit to what you want to play and what will be meaningful to your characters. Next, why don't we tackle those darn elemental cells? So, like I said, 3 of them: the fire, the water, and the earth cells, I think are fairly explanatory. I ran them basically straight up. But that darn air cell, the hint, precious air, is nobody's going to think precious air means I should break open the hollow bone of the aarakocra. So what I changed that to is hollow air as opposed to precious air. So hollow, giving them some kind of hint that they can put 2 and 2 together to remember that birds have hollow bones, and that an aarakocra skeleton is like a bird, and then they should break open one of the bones to get the air that's hollow inside of it. It's still a stretch. I'll give you that, it's still a stretch. But I will tell you this, that I bet if I asked all of my player characters, this puzzle in this room was the most scared they were the entire campaign. Like they were more sure they were going to die in that moment than in any other. And I covered this real briefly in my top 10 list, but for all 4 of these cells, have a timer. Have some kind of timer set up, or even don't set it up. Just tell them that you have put a 2-minute timer on and set your phone down so that they're not dilly-dallying, that they've got to figure stuff out quick. Put them in initiative order so that they kind of have a turn, so they're not just shouting out, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Like, you got to control it a little bit. So have them roll initiative among themselves, like whoever's in. I divided my party up into 3 different groups. Roll an initiative so you can tell which guy's going first. And then, most importantly, have all your players leave the room, like go into another room where they can't see what's happening, so that the 2 that are in the task solve it themselves, and then the next 2 come in and they solve it themselves. There's no metagaming. There's no, this is what they did, so we're going to just do the same thing. I want each group to have to go through each of these cells in the same way and have the same, intensity and urgency to get through them. Now, this room it says that it has no air in it. Like they show up and they're instantly suffocating. So read up on your suffocation rules. It's different from holding your breath. So you cannot hold your breath in this room. It is like the vacuum of space. So if you had breath in your lungs when you showed up, everything's gone. So you're instantly suffocating right from the start. There's no, I've got 3 minutes of held air. One of our players was a turtle. They can hold their breath for a long, long time. That is not valid in this room. This is not just you're holding your breath underwater. Complete vacuum. There is no air. You are suffocating. So you get, and now you're down to turns. Like it's not minutes per constitution modifier. It's turns. So if your modifier is 3 or 2 or 1, that's how many rounds you can still be conscious in this room before you start dying. Folks that have low constitution, they're out of it like that, and they're in death saves basically. If they understand that hollow bones thing, hopefully they get it and they pop it open. The funny thing is, my 2 players with the most constitution went in together to this room, so they had the longest time before the dire consequences started, and they were right to the edge. Like they were, the next turn they were both unconscious and would just die before they figured it out. Does everybody just know that birds have hollow bones? I don't know. I took biology a long time ago, but anyway, I thought that at least changing that hint, precious air to hollow air, hopefully gave them a little bit of encouragement on getting through that really dangerous and really deadly and really, really, really fun room. All right, so on level 4, there is a hidden room that takes you to a grandfather clock. And it's meant to, the flow of time is affected. You know, your character, depending what they do, could gain 20 years, lose 20 years. The little thing inside the clock, that the little pendulum thing that goes back and forth, is actually an important gem. You have to open the clock just right and get the gem out. I mean, it's a really, really unclear what you're supposed to be doing with this clock. And as you're dealing with it, it's, you know, you're being affected by this time warp thing. And the key to it is an invisible key that's in the rolling death area. There's a wooden chest, and once you open the chest, a stone ball comes down and destroys the chest. So if you didn't know there was an invisible key in it to start with, I don't know that you're going to go through the remains of the invisible chest to find it. So what I did to change this is I didn't do it. I did not have the secret room. I did not even foreshadow it in any way. So I would just take this out. Unless you're smarter than me and can come up with a better way of running it. It just seemed like such a pointless, obscure, very vague task. I didn't like it. Took it out. Gone. You're dead to me. All right, level 5 is the Gears of Hate, which is a really amazingly designed level. This is the one that has the 3 giant gears in the middle, and there's a control room that you have to kind of push buttons and dials and levers that aren't marked to figure out how to make things move. Really cool dynamic. Make sure you figured out in advance how you're going to run this. Like I said before, I bought the interactive map on Roll20 so that I could just, you know, change the map and they could see where all the things were. If you're going to cut out big paper gears and move them the way that they're supposed to, or if you're going to 3D print something, just think of something, because theater of the mind on this would be very complex. And honestly, if the characters aren't in the gears that are turning, they would never really know what the gear, like if they're in gear 1, they won't know that now by turning this, now there's an entry that's opened up down there. It's really an awesome mechanic, but you've got to very much put some prep time into how you're going to visualize that and make sure that it's clear. The problem with the design is whoever's in the control room, you know, if they're moving buttons around and moving gears around, they're not able, they kind of get stuck in that control room, because if you turn them just right, there's no exit for them to come out of the control room. And I didn't want someone to have to sit and just be the guy that controls it, because there are encounters and there's rooms, there's whole sections of this floor that are accessed by these things. You know, if they're just stuck in the control room, then they're just waiting until it's their turn to play again. So I kind of changed it so that the person doing the controls, it was clear to them that by manipulating these gears, however they did it, it was clear to them that they could be projected into any one of those gears from the control room. So it gave them a little bit of a chance to participate. So if they turned them just right and they no longer had a passage to get to the 3rd gear, they could project themselves to that gear, teleport themselves, however you want to say it. That way there was a little bit more way for them to get across it. That's the only problem. I didn't want them to be stuck in the control room. So your ideas may vary. It might be more fun to keep people trapped in places, or, you know, handicap the party a little bit by one of their members not being able to go. Take it how you want, but that was one of the unexpected outcomes of those fun gears, is that somebody's getting stuck in that control room. Nobody likes that. Lastly, there's a room on this floor called the Hall of the Golden Mastodon. And it's one of the side rooms that you can access by the 3rd gear, and you have to get it just right to be able to go down in there. And the way it's written, it's got a really great lore. You know, there's a Chilton warrior that, you know, went through all of these trials, and he had a mastodon that was with him, and the room is covered in not tapestries, like frescoes or carvings that outline his, you know, his exploits, or however you want to say it. If you engage in this room, then you have to repeat all of his exploits. And he went through the hells, the 9 hells. And so there are devils on each level that you have to fight in order to be worthy of this hero. And there is an artifact that you get, but it's not. I mean, it's important to the greater story of Omu and the royalty and all that kind of stuff. But unless you really went into all of that, it's not going to make any sense to him. I didn't go into it. I didn't feel like I needed that big of extra level of continuing of the royal line of Omu. I didn't feel like that was a big thing to focus on. Anyway, so this is just a big combat encounter. So we've had a ton of combat encounters. It's very possible that they just did the blood gear, the gear of blood, which is 5 or 6 straight combats in a row. If they come in here, then they fire 6 or 7 pretty difficult combats with all the different kinds of devils. The only thing that I really liked is that the different types of devils are pretty cool. Like they have lots of fun. The bearded one can fight with its beard, and they just have all these weird, unusual attacks. So that was kind of cool in theory. But if you think that's cool, just work it into another part. Don't play like this. So I didn't want to just give them another long, kind of pointless combat. I don't mind giving them combat because I like wearing them down and making things a little bit more difficult. But I wanted to build something that was more meaningful to them. And this was a plan I had from the very beginning, like way at the start. I knew that they would have companions and even player characters that along the way were going to die, because that's just how deadly this campaign is. And I also knew that Acererack is kind of a jerk. We've mentioned that before. So I would think that he would do everything he can to psychologically taunt and belittle and give disadvantage to the party. So this room became the attack of the former companions. So instead of ripping their souls out in the way that the soulmonger normally does, Acererack had taken their souls when they died, but had kept them in a secret place and then reanimated them in this room to just emotionally and physically torment the players. So we had a couple NPCs, guides. We had a druid in our party, and he had a Deinonychus named Jungle Princess, who was very, very helpful and instrumental to lots of battles that died. She was there. And then I had, in my campaign, Syndra Sylvain dies. Like, she succumbs to the death curse in the final act before they come to Omu. So Syndra Sylvain's there, which is a huge enemy to have to fight. She's powerful. As the campaign goes, there's got to be people that have have special meaning to your players that die. Bring them back here. Make them powerful. Make them fight as hard as they possibly can against your characters. Level them up if you need to. If they died at second level, don't fight your level 10 people with the second level. Level them up. Make sure they're powerful. Make sure it's an emotional thing where they're, they have that look in their eyes like they don't want to do this fight, but they're compelled to do it. And it makes the players hate Acererack even more. That it's not enough that all of this other awful monsters and traps are trying to kill him. Now their dearly departed friends are trying to kill him. He's awful, and he knows it, and he loves it. Lean into it. Make anything you can think of to make them hate Acererack more. Do it. And it was a great fight. So keep that in mind as you're running the campaign. Save those folks up. Don't give any kind of hint that you'll ever see them again. And when they show up and the dust or the smoke kind of clears and they see in front of them all of their deceased friends that have blood in their eyes and then they have to fight them, it's an emotional moment, and it's a lot of fun. That's how I changed that room. I kept the Mastodon there, and one of my favorite, I mentioned in my top 10 list, my favorite is the gold skull that comes around and basically does vicious mockery at all times, and you have disadvantage, and he does all the dad jokes and insults. So this room has a Mastodon in it. I still kept that, and it's jewel encrusted. So I basically hinted that every jewel on that Mastodon could be fed to that thing, to the skull, and it would go away. So instead of getting all that riches, they had to give it to the stupid skull to get him to go away. But I think they were totally fine with that. So those are all the changes I made to levels 3, 4, and 5. I will mention that I leveled my players up probably more than I think that the book talks about. I think the book talks about maybe getting to the end by level or like a level 11, 10 or 11. I thought that was kind of puny, especially for how dangerous this dungeon is and how hard the final fight is. So when my players got to the tomb at the start, they leveled up to level 11 when they walked in. That's one of the things that Ubtao blessed them with is leveled them up. And then on level 2, when they complete level 2, then I leveled them up to 12. And then here on level 5, when they complete it, they're leveled up to 13. So that way, then when they go into the final battle, they're at level 13. Take that as you will. I know players love leveling up, and it makes things way more interesting, and it keeps fights from just being the same old, same old. So I was probably more liberal on leveling people up, but there's so many cool things that happen, and so few campaigns allow you to level up all that far. So I threw them a bone and let them level up to 13 in this tomb. I think it was a lot of fun. They enjoyed it. All right, the only thing left to talk about is the final floor and the final confrontation with Acererack. And that, my friends, is another video. Keep watching, watch for it updating. It's going to be so much fun. Please like and subscribe. Send me a comment. I love chatting with you. Tell your friends, get a tattoo, whatever it is to let people know that this is the YouTube channel to be a part of, and I really appreciate it. Next time we're going to talk Acererack and the final battle and the Atropole and all of the things that we've been working for this whole time. I'm so excited to tell you what we did and how we did it. So thanks so much. See you later. Rock on.